Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up?
A little bit about myself. I grew up in New York City. Started my illustrious audio career at Electric Lady Studios.
Oh, wonderful.
I was a gopher at $5 a day. And I did that for, I don't know, a year maybe, as I was going to NYU at the same time. So my friend John Goldberger and myself were the only two in our class to, have a job in the industry and be learning about the industry at the same time. So
Wonderful.
That was kind of interesting. I went and got food and scrubbed the toilets and, mopped the floors and
as you do.
What interns do.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. And, I got, some pretty important sandwiches for people like Keith Richards and Mick Jagger and, things like
Those
that.
Those are very important sandwiches. Yeah.
That's right. So, after that, I moved out to Los Angeles where I was in the maintenance department at Electric Lady. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And then I took that experience and moved to Los Angeles and found a place called One on One that myself and a friend built. And then like the first 13 or 14 records to come out of there, it was a perfect time too. But the first 13 or 14 records to come out of there were triple platinum or better. So you got And Justice for All, you got the Bullet Boys, you got Warrant Winger, all of that stuff, Poison, Motley Crue, all that, the 80s hair metal bands, right?
Yep.
Huge at that time. And so, we built this 50 by 60 room all out of oak. So it had a nice resonant, quality to it. And so then, I just started making phone calls and called all the producers who were in the top 10 at the time. And they just came by the studio and boom,
Who did you build it with? Who was your partner?
Oh, his name was Jeff, and he was just a friend of mine that was a construction guy, and he was friends with the owner, who was Jim David, who was Hal David's son. So Hal David and Burt Bacharach. So there's a lot of song lineage there.
I'm looking at your discography from that period. So you're sort of making your way from assistant to second engineer to engineer. What was the sort of moment for you? I see you've got the Tony album there, the Revival. Was that one of your first like pure engineering jobs that charted and stuff?
I think that was one, and then Jar of Flies, of course.
Right.
Because in the middle of like the Damn Yankees records and things like that, I was Alice called me and asked me if I'd do an EP with them, and so I ran up to Seattle real quick and threw down what's now known as Jar of Flies.
That's amazing. Which studio did you do it in Seattle?
It was London Bridge.
London Bridge. I know London Bridge, yeah.
It's
of course.
Many great records. Console. Absolutely. It's a beautiful place.
Well, how does that lead from that? Because it's quite eclectic before that. A lot of the kind of the 80s metal bands. Although, did that happen before Divine Intervention? Which one came first?
Yeah, that was later. I was into producing and soul engineering at that time.
Right.
After the Wallflowers and all that kind of good stuff happened. I didn't like to be pigeonholed.
No, I mean I love that. I love I feel like it's a true test of a proper producer. You can work with all kinds of genres. I mean, you think of somebody like George Martin. Of course, we can go the Beatles, but then he also produced Jeff Beck's best work. Right. You can do rock, jazz, funk records, and also do pop rock albums and everything in between. Yeah, no, I agree. Yep. I think all the best producers share that in common. Eclecticism. Jar of Flies. How did that come about then? I mean, that's quite a big phone call to get, considering they'd obviously already done, Dirt, etc. Done the first couple of albums with Dave Jordan. How did you get the gig from that to doing Jar of Flies?
I heard the band on the radio, and I was like, man, this band is amazing. Who are they? Where are they? How do I get my hands on them? And I got in touch with their A&R guy, who was Nick Terzo at the time at Columbia. And he and I became friends, and he gave me a gig to do What the Hell Have I and A Little Bitter, which were in the Schwarzenegger soundtrack, Last Action Hero. And those are my first two songs with Alice. And I went in and recorded them. We co-produced them with I think it was the movie guy at the time. And then Andy Wallace mixed them, came back, and they were like, oh, we don't really like these mixes. And I was like, oh, that's too bad. what do you want to do about it? Well, when you remix everything, and later on, I ended up remixing those songs. But I found out I got the gig because they didn't like the mixes on those two songs.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, and they liked work that I did previous, my other works besides, just how we got along in the studio and stuff. And so, going back to that period, then, Jerry called me up from Australia and said, "Hey man, you want to do an EP?" I was like, "Heck yeah." So
Nice.
I met them in Seattle, and 11 days later I was flying home and it was finished.
Amazing.
Except for the mixing.
And it was quite a big departure from the first two records, which were definitely like huge rock. And this one's a lot more intimate and kind of in your face. Definitely far more intimate sounding recordings. Do you think that was something they were trying to do? Was kind of step outside their previous sound and do something different?
Well, yeah, their discography is such that they started off with a heavy record, and then they did an acoustic EP.
Yep.
And then they went to a heavy record, and then Jar of Flies was their second acoustic EP. Acoustic.
Yeah.
It was semi-acoustic. Started that way.
Yeah.
And then we were just like, let's just make songs to be the songs.
Then, of course, Alice in Chains. So you went from engineering and mixing credit to finally now being the producer on the album. Right. They must have loved what you did on Jar of Flies.
Agreed, they did. And it was, Jar of Flies was the first EP to ever come out at #1.
Wow.
So I had that going for me at the time. And the fact that, Jerry and I had talked about it, and he promised me that, I would be producing the next record. So that's how it came down, with a handshake and, good to go. I love working like that.
That's amazing. And you must have been fairly young at the time. I mean, that's 29 years ago.
Right. I think I was about 27, 28 years old. Did
they also think of you because of Metallica? Even though you didn't have a production or a credit or anything like that, they knew that you were very eclectic and you could bring in different worlds. Because I'm looking at this, and your discography, like you were saying, is incredibly varied. Up until that point, I mean, you'd assisted and worked on records like Natalie Cole, Robin Ford, Brian Wilson, and Metallica. The only common thread is they're all really good.
And their music.
Their music, yeah. Really good music.
So, they came to me in the studio, right? I mean, I was the only engineer and the only assistant at One-on-One for a long time.
Oh, wow.
So I did everything that had to happen there. So any client that walked in the door, I was destined to work with them. So that's how that built up so quickly. The
Wallflowers. So what's the dynamic in that? Neil Avron's a friend as well, and I've interviewed him years ago, actually. So what was the sort of dynamic in the making of that record?
I was just the engineer, and T-Bone Burnett was producing. Yeah. And so it was my first, first time working with T-Bone, which was amazing. Yep. So just being, hired as the engineer, you just go in, you record, and you keep your mouth shut, and, and learn. Right. Yep. And, follow the producer's instructions and don't ask any questions. That's the way it is, except for, do you like the sound?
Yeah.
Right. So, if everything's going well, then you just pay attention and go. But it was a fun record. I got along great with everyone. Really loved the band. And, we won a Grammy. So
amazing.
Couldn't have been that bad.
Kiss.
That's right.
Yeah, but you got production, engineering, and mixing credit on that.
They came to me and wanted, somebody who, at that period of time, Gene was looking to do, a quote unquote grunge record, because that was what was hot at the moment. And so that was, he took up, got with all the people that were good at writing that type of music, playing that type of music, and producing that kind of music. And Bob Ezrin actually recommended me, and next thing I know, boom, I'm in the studio with them. I'm
actually going to have to go back and listen to that Kiss record, Kiss Trying to Be Grunge. Sevendust, there's a band I've actually been talking about quite a lot recently. So you're working with them in 97. That's pretty early on.
I think, they were looking for a producer for their next record, and I was managed by somebody in New York. And so I think they knew JJ French, who was managing Sevendust at the time. And so it just kind of, went together. I went down to Atlanta and hung out with them for a little bit. And then we decided, we want to do this. Did some pre-production down there. And then we flew up to the farm up in Massachusetts at Longview Farm.
Incredible.
And and did what is now known as home.
How much are you using kind of modern things? What I mean by that is like virtual stuff. Are you using virtual guitar amps? Are you blending those with real amps? The reason why I ask is because a lot of these guitar albums that we're talking about, like the Sevendust record, although that's a massive drum percussive record as well, obviously Sevendust, they're a huge part of their sound. But Alice in Chains, these bands were known for like incredible guitar tones. And I think being a skilled recordist, as it were, of guitars and being able to capture that energy was a massive skill in those days, and not everybody could do it. Not everybody can do it these days either.
True.
And, you know, there was, I'm not sure how you like to do things where you sort of using a 57 and just, you know, EQing on the amp, or were you getting in there and using multiple amps, splitting up frequencies, or a combination of those ideas? And do you still think that way, or are you finding like with virtual amps and stuff that you might be able to get close to what you hear in your head now inside of the box? Or is it a combination of all of those things?
It's a combination of all of them.
Right.
And it really depends on the band that I'm working with.
Right.
Frame 42, for instance, the band I'm currently working with, they really like to have their amps and play their guitars. And, you know, we don't want any fake stuff on this record at all. It all has to be mic'd up and, you know, done the natural way. And to my ear, that still sounds the best. You know, I have a Kemper, I use it once in a while. It's like, but it sounds digital to me. So, you know, I still have my Class A electronics knees and Trident A ranges, you know, lots of compressors and, you know, all kinds of stuff that I carried with me through the years. And, you know, I think a combination of everything is really the way to go, you know, depending on what you're recording. Like guitars, they're very sensitive to, you know, the 3 to 5K range, right? And so if you're on analog tape, you know, running that thing back and forth, you're going to lose all that. You know, and you might have like fought with the guitar player. No, I want a half dB more at 3K. No, it sounds like shit now. You know, that kind of talk goes on, and you know, but if you're in digital, it's you know, it stays that way. So you know, you don't lose anything by running the tape back and forth.
Yeah.
So you know, to answer your question, I think it's more of, you know, just a combination of everything, and depending on the band that I'm working with, how they like to, you know, it's all about their vision for their sound, right? So if they're, you know, an all in the box type of band, they're probably not going to mind, you know, playing 3 notes and looping it, you know. But if they're not, you know, and they like their stage show and they like to be live and, you know, kick ass live, then you got to put up some microphones and do what it takes.
This is where we geek out a little bit. I'm going to ask you some geeky questions.
All right, geek
out. Do you have any favorite guitar amp mics? Is there any go-tos? Is it 57s, or do you kind of shake it up? Is there any little tips?
It's 57s, 421s, Coles. You know, I like room mics on stuff. It just really, you know, I'm a 421 kind of a guy, or a RE20. You know, I like some bottom in my guitars and basses and things like that. So, you know, the 57, the 421, you know, all of that stuff, or, you know, dynamic mics play a good blended. I mean, you know, sometimes I'll do a top and a bottom, but I always go center cone.
Always go center cone.
I don't always go center cone. I don't know. It just sounds more direct to me. I can hear more of the pick hitting the string.
Multiple mics, capsules touching for phase.
Depending on what it is. Again, you know, I put in like, you know, little 451s in there, and, you know, at an angle, at the angle of the speaker, and to get a lot of bottom. You know, I've done all kinds of crazy stuff to, you know, I'll use a D112 every once in a while on the floor. That picks up a big woof. You know, if you're chugging along and you're doing like a 7-string with Sevendust, for instance, you know, you want that when you you have that kind of a rhythm going. So, you know, I had to find it. It's right there on the floor.
Nice. with the D112.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Right in front of the speaker.
Amazing. How about open back, mic in the back? Any kind of stuff like that? Flipping the polarity on the back mic?
Yeah, sometimes. I worked with a band called Stone Senate a couple of years ago, and, you know, the lead guitarist / lead singer, or, you know, he loved his what are they, twin reverbs. And so, he would play nothing but that. And so, I definitely, put it in a nice space for him and mic'd the front and the back. And,
Incredible.
Just got a whole big, huge sound for him. And he was very happy about that.
Great. Well, I like the idea of the experimentation. For the Coles, are you using that similarly for some of the kind of a little bit darker sounds? Because obviously it's not,
Yes.
doesn't have a lot of high highs.
Right. Yeah. So that's sort of more the low mid push.
Right.
Depending, depending on the guitarist and the band, and like I wouldn't use a Coles for lead tone, for instance. I'd only use it for rhythms because of the darkness, right? So, I can get away with it when I'm recording rhythm guitar.
Incredible. And would you ever use that on its own, or are you kind of finding you're blending it with the 57 for more of the presence?
I've used it on its own, depending on what it was. They sound really nice on clean stuff. Like on a JC120, a pair of them sound really nice in stereo.
Wonderful,
so,
yeah.
It's kind of, because you make the amp nice and sparkly, and then the mics will just calm it down a little bit. So it's an interesting experimentation in sound.
I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense. I'm a big fan of a JC120, so glad you brought that up. After Alice in Chains were no more, I see that you did some of Jerry's solo stuff. So obviously you had a great working relationship with him. I
did. Actually, I did Jerry's solo stuff while the band was still going on.
Oh, I see.
I did the Boggy Depot record, and that was before his Degradation trip, the double record that he did. And then there was the Unplugged record, an amazing recording in itself.
Tell us a little bit about that. What made it so amazing for you?
The way it came out, first of all. But the performance was amazing because, we're at the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York. If you've ever watched that thing, you know that, Lane forgot a bunch of the lyrics. And when you're doing MTV Unplugged, some of the rules are that you cannot overdub anything.
Right.
So you have to catch it live off the floor, right? So you're allowed to record the song as many times as you want until you get the take you want. But you can't overdub on it. So, there were some instances where Lane kept forgetting the lyrics. I had to go out and write them down and do that kind of stuff, put a music stand by him so he'd remember them. And we finally made it through. But I guess the best thing about what happened was that when I was mixing the record, got all done, went to Stephen Markison, mastering guy in LA there. And because I mixed it at Wright Track in New York. And so Markison was my guy, and I took it out to him, and I walked in probably about half an hour late. And I was like, "Oh, dude, sorry I'm late." He goes, "Hey, no worries, but I got bad news for you." I'm like, "What's up?" He goes, "I can't make it any better." I go, "What do you mean you can't make it better? You're supposed to make it better. That's your job." He goes, "Yeah, I know, but in this case, I can't make it better." I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" He goes, "Well, why don't you go check out what's going on behind the console here?" And walk behind his console, and he had a ATR 102 Ampex, half-inch machine, sitting there plugged directly into the 1630, which is the device that was used to capture when you make CD glass masters. He was using zero processing on the entire record. It's like it just came off the console at Wright Track. So
wonderful.
I'm very, very proud of that. Because all of the songs were the same. So everything you hear is from that. That's
incredible. That's absolutely beautiful to hear. Yeah, that's a heck of a compliment. You're getting a lot of mixing work as well, mixing Primus, Third Eye Blind, plus you're producing and engineering some Korn as well. That was a good time. I mean, I'm thinking about it here. So you got Primus, Alice in Chains, Third Eye Blind, Korn, Metallica, Nixon's, Sevendust. I mean, a lot of the biggest bands of the period. Ozzy, yeah.
Ozzy's in there.
Sammy Hagar. Yeah, that's Soulfly. I remember that record as well. Primitive. That was a great album.
Primitive. I love that record.
Yeah, great record, yeah. And you got a lot of key credit and bass playing and programming and drum programming and digital editing and mixing and engineering, and that sounds like a labor of love.
It is. Yeah, I mean, just if it needs to be done and I can do it, I'll do it.
By this point, it looks like you're moving into quite a lot of mixing.
Yes.
Anastasio's album.
Are you familiar with Oysterhead?
I want to say yes because it rings a bell, but I'd have to quickly hear the music to make sure.
So it's Trey Anastasio, Les Claypool from Primus.
Okay, now I remember. Yeah.
And we had a great time with that record. That was amazing. I guess probably one of my best musical forays.
And of course, you did Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne.
I did. That was at A&M Studios in Los Angeles. That was a lot of fun. I love working with Ozzy.
Let's do a bit more geeky stuff. So drum-wise, pretty standard with D112 inside, maybe a FET 47 on the outside, on the kick. Do you have any particular kind of secrets that you can share with us for us geeky engineer folks?
For all the geeky engineer folks out in the audience, I always take the front head off the kick drum.
Oh, you
always.
do? Okay.
I pack it with a packing blanket and usually a cinder block.
Okay.
And I'll have to put, foam or something underneath that kick drum so it doesn't oval out, right? Because that cinder block's usually kind of heavy. But then I push it kind of real tight against the head. And once you take off that front head, the drummer, his foot, he doesn't know what to do because it doesn't snap back, right? Because there's no head with the concussion to kick back the pedal, right? So when you put this the weight in there, and you push it up against the head, he now has that back, right? And a lot of guys really like that. They're like, no, don't take off the head. I go, well, I got a surprise for you. And it sounds a lot better in the room too, because now you have this big open kick drum in the room, and then when you light up your room mics, everything is there, right? So it's one of those things that it's just a really good trick that I always do. And I always do a D112 and a 421 on the outer perimeters just inside. And, I usually use 421s on my toms, a 57 and then a 451 on my snare drum on the top. And
so you've used the 451.
I put them together, one stand, and boom. And then I started something back in the 80s, a nice big tube mic about 6 feet away from the kick drum, about waist height, and compressed the living daylights out of it. And I do that constantly, and I get good results. You can only use it when you're doing like kick, snare, and hat, right? You can't do it when he's beating the hell out of the cymbals, and but it makes your room sound really massive when you do that kind of a thing. Especially with like a 44-to-1 compression ratio on an 1176. And it timed out perfectly so that the compressor lets go with the music, so it seems to just breathe, and that's an amazing trick as well. And that not many people know that one. I do see them putting the mic out there though.
Yeah, I've always liked to put a Coles there, like pulled back,
right?
For the same kind of reason you say that the problem is as soon as the drummer starts bashing away on the cymbals, it's unusable. But at least the Coles gives you a bit of a fighting chance because it's not overly bright. So I know what you're saying.
Right.
I've never really aggressively compressed it as much as I should. So I should try that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then have your drummer play kick, snare, and hat, and like set that compression or set the timing so that it's just, and you just feel it start breathing. And it's like, oh, that's pretty neat. It works great in ballads, especially.
Preferences for overheads on mics?
I find the nearest condenser. If I got a pair of something, that'll work. I'm not real picky, because I worked in a lot of different studios around the world. And sometimes they don't have the exact mics that I want, or that I'm quote unquote used to. So, mics are all like voices, right? We all have a different voice. And so every microphone out there, even if they're the same 57 or 58, it's going to sound a tiny bit different. So if you put something on, like, oh, they got this blah, blah, blah microphone, this AKG blah, blah, blah over here. Yeah, I'll use that on the tom. What is it? I don't know. Boom. Oh, it sounds great. Cool. Well, yeah, now you just found a new toy, so I like to experiment a lot.
With your equipment there, I'm trying to see behind what you've got hiding rather behind. Is there any particular favorite pre's? You've mentioned Neve a handful of times now, so I'm assuming Neve mic pre's if you've got choice.
I am a 1073 type of guy. I have 6 of them over here. I have 10 A range, tried an A range.
You mentioned that as well. Yes. Beautiful pre's.
Yeah. Yeah, which, there was only 11 consoles made in the world. And then Cherokee owned 4 of them, and I worked at Cherokee for a long time. So I got to know them really well, and I got to walk away with 10 of them.
Nice. From Cherokee?
From Cherokee.
Oh, wow. I'm just going through your discography here. We've got Fear Factory, again, producing, engineering, mixing. Is that something you like, the challenge of multitasking, of doing all of those jobs?
Yes, I do. I find that I can better get the artist's vision out to them by working by myself. I have had engineers in the past, and they've all been really, really great guys. And learned a lot both ways from them. And it just takes a certain guy, to be an engineer. Like I said before, like when you're the engineer, you just get the sound and sit there and wait. And don't, you're not going to be talking about the music to the guitar player, because that's not your job. But I've had a bunch of guys. I like to do all 3. I guess that would make me a control freak to some people. But it definitely helps get the vision across, and, with the minimal amount of time. And if it's not right, it's my fault.
I see an engineering credit. It's probably out of time because it says 2011, Screaming Trees. Is that some stuff that was done years beforehand that didn't get released for a while?
Yes. And Mark and I were very good friends because of Lane Staley back in the day, and the whole Seattle connection. And I did some stuff at Mark's house way back in the day. We just, we sat down. He says, "Hey man, you want to work?" Sorry. "Hey man, you want to work?" He had that really nice deep voice. I can't even do it. Sorry, Mark. But yeah, he had that great deep voice, and he's just like, "Hey man, you want to work?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go in the studio." And we were both in LA, and so I went to his house, and I don't know, he threw down like 6 or 7 songs.
Never quite got the success that he deserved.
Agreed.
Yeah, but you're right. What an incredible voice, and definitely a voice from that scene. One of the most credible artists. The ones that there was a lot of stuff that spun off and was more sound alike. Is that fair to say? But he just he was completely unique. Oh my God!
Right.
You work with future leaders of the world?
I did for 5 minutes.
I did all the pre-pro and all the demos with the original band in LA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, about in 2007 or 8 or whatever for that first album.
All right.
So I did all the demos. Then they got signed to Epic, and then they took my hard drive up to Vancouver. And when Garth did the record comes out, and I've got engineering credit all over the record. And I'm like, how did that happen? And what they'd done, they'd used all my vocals, all my guitars.
Right. They just flew everything in.
Yeah. Those were the days. What are you doing outside of music, Toby?
Outside of music,
yeah,
I have a sound healing company.
Beautiful.
At the moment, it's called Tomes, and you spell that TAUMMHOMS, and you can find it at tomes.com. And it's for sound healing. It's for sleep, and everybody needs to sleep, and sound is probably your best friend. And I made a couple of what I call tonalities, which are just a conglomeration of sine waves put together, different frequencies. And I mixed them in a certain way, and it came out with this thing I call tonalities, right? And so they will help you sleep. I also have the sounds of healing, and which are I have 16 different tonalities for that. There's a bunch of different. I have lullabies, all kinds of different stuff, and so that's what I'm into. I'm going to be just working on that some more, because there's millions of different ways to put those frequencies together, and I can come up with lots of different tonalities, and so that's what I'm into.
That's amazing. Well, we'll have a link underneath, and people can go and check that out. What are you working on at the moment, band-wise? What's the music? You've got a band in the studio, yeah.
I have a band in the studio. We've been in the studio coming up on 3 months. Their name is Frame 42, and they're from Lapeer, Michigan. what we've done is we went into record 14 songs, went in rehearsal, right about Thanksgiving or something like that, or maybe even before that, they started writing their songs. And then they, we went into rehearsals, kind of worked everything out for 14 songs. We decided at that point that, they're going to come out with 2 EPs. And, because they needed something out right away, and they needed about an hour's worth of music so they don't have to play covers and, stuff like that. So they set about doing that. They're a young band. And I'll let them introduce themselves.
Yeah,
and they can
let's meet them.
And yes, and they are in the studio. Come on in, guys. This is Warren. Warren, this is Frame 42.
Hey, Frame 42.
They're gonna put on some headphones that are down on the floor.
Hello.
Hello. So please introduce yourselves.
How the devil are you?
This is Warren.
Hi, I'm Ava, and I'm the singer.
I'm
Hi,
Brock,
Ava, the
and
singer.
I'm the bass player.
Hey, Brock.
I'm Ben. I'm the rhythm guitar.
Hey, Ben.
I'm Michael, and I play lead guitar.
Michael, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you.
Have you had fun? Been having fun with Toby?
Oh, absolutely.
So you've done
It's been a lot of
14
fun.
songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
That's quite adventurous. So is this one album or is this like 3 EPs?
This is gonna be Toby has been saying, if you do one more song, you can get 3 EPs, but we just have 2 right now, 2 of 7 songs. And then we're gonna merge them and come out with the album.
How would you describe yourselves?
I think probably some, definitely rock for sure. A little bit of that vintage feel, but also a little bit harder. We're kind of in the middle of everything, but I think we have a sound that's pretty unique and special to us.
Amazing. Amazing. Do you already have stuff released? So can we link to Spotify or something for stuff you've already got out?
Yes, absolutely.
We have a single out called Thicker Than Blood, and that's just on any streaming.
Thicker Than Blood. Lovely.
Mhm.
Yes.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Do you do backgrounds as well, any of the guys?
We're actually not on the album. Actually, yeah. You guys are on the album
we
a
are.
little bit, and I'm giving them some vocal lessons, so live shows.
Yeah, we're gonna work our way up to be able to be unanimous in live shows.
So tell us the dynamic. How did you get to meet Toby? Did he find you or did you find him?
We kind of found him through a family friend through racing again. And actually, it was Russ and Mary O'Blennis. They actually own the house that we're staying in and the studio that they're letting us use. And so that was incredible of them.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That's quite a nice landing point to get Toby Wright to produce your album.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
And 3 months, so you've been able to enjoy it and put some real love into it.
Oh, yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
We just been in pre-pro with him, and then
I
we
was
came
gonna
out
ask.
to the studio with him. So it's been a long venture, but it's been worth it. Totally.
Yeah, I was
we're
going to ask
finally
that
at
because
the end of it.
I feel like that's a big, strong point, isn't it, really, if you can get in there and do a lot of pre-production. So by the time you come to record, there's some focus. So working with Toby has been about a lot of pre-production by the sounds of it.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Since October, we were in pre-production and then just started recording the day after Christmas.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we were pretty polished by the time we came into the studio.
Lovely. Where are you at the record? You're on vocals, mixing, guitars? Whereabouts are you?
We just finished EP2, and Toby's got probably like 3 more songs to mix. So we've been hanging out and listening to the mixes and stuff, and it's all sounding great so far.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. So what's the plan? You're going to put this out independently? You have a label, or you're shopping for label deals, or what's the plan?
Right now, we're just gonna be releasing independently, but we're gonna see what the future holds and just try to get as many gigs and play out for as many people as possible with our new music.
Great. How's the scene in the local area? Is there a lot of opportunities to play live shows?
Yeah, especially we're kind of by the Detroit area too. So we've been doing a lot of gigs down there, and it's a pretty great music scene.
Metro Detroit and the Flint area have a lot of venues and opportunities for us to play. So
that's great to hear, because like growing up in the UK, in England, Detroit's music scene was super important because, of course, you had Motown, which is all the obvious stuff. But for us, we all grew up on kind of the Stooges and stuff like that. And so Iggy's a big deal.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, and it's just such a great calling card for Detroit. So it's good to hear that there's still a lot of venues to play. Great to meet you all. Now I'm excited to hear the music.
Nice to meet you.
Maybe Toby can send me something that I will not play to anybody else, just so we can hear it.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Do you have a release date?
Sometime in May, we're going to release that first EP.
So we're going to put a link here to the latest EP, which has just come out. So check the link out down below. Great. Well, lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you too.
Excellent. I see you're still an NS10 guy. You grew up with them, so you know how they sound and you trust them.
Exactly. That's been my go-to since I was born. I feel like,
Right.
and people are like, "Hey, try these KRKs. Hey, try this. Hey, try this over here." I try it, but I can't get good mixes out of them because I'm so used to these.
Yeah. Yep. Once you fall in love with that mid range, you can't beat it. That mid range, and it's just
right. Exactly, and that's that it's really good for radio. I get great radio style mixes out of the NS10s, and so
yeah, amazing. I think one last geeky thing we haven't talked about is
a geeky thing. Okay.
Let's cover the last couple of things, because we did some drum miking stuff, we did some guitar miking stuff. What about bass miking? I wonder, do you have like your own kind of selection of bass amps that you can get something, or do you always work what the artist brings, or combination of both?
I always work with what the artist brings.
Okay,
because I found that, when you work with a young band out of, let's just pick a weird place like, North Carolina somewhere, and they're backwoods kind of people and they can't afford very much instrumentation. But what attracted me to them was their style and their sound. And how they got that sound was all their broken instruments and or whatever they're playing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I want to capture that, you know what I mean? Because that to me was what attracted me to them. So why would I go and, rent a, truckload full of amazing, pristine gear and have it sound amazing and pristine when that's really not what you're going to get when you go on the road? When you go and you hear that band, they're going to sound, they're going to take their old broken instruments or whatever it is that they love to play. And that's what, that's the sound of the band.
Any particular mic for the bass amp?
An RE20, a D112, an 87, believe it or not.
I believe the 87, yeah. I
like those on there. What's another one? Oh, I have used a Sound Deluxe. But I this was when I was putting little, like using like an MPEG B112, right? Use those, put it in a small room, and then I would mic the room along with the bass, like use the Sound Deluxe in a Omni pattern. Sorry, not Omni, Omni, an Omni pattern, and just capture the entire room. And then have other things to pick up, the attack of the bass and so on and so forth.
Right.
So,
right.
Lots of experimentation.
No, it's fantastic. And then do you have your own DI that you always go to, like a go-to DI?
No, I just, again, it's whatever's handy.
Right.
And it doesn't, if I don't like the sound of that one, I'll go to the next one.
Lovely.
So, and if I run out of that, then I'll punt.
Now
it just depends on what's going on.
Do you have your in your arsenal? Do you have your favorite vocal mic, the one that's the magic for you?
I do, and that is a Sound Deluxe U95.
A Sound Deluxe U95. I'm looking for it now.
I know. This one is custom.
Yeah.
And it was changed a bunch for Lane Staley back in the day.
Oh, wow.
I bought this for basically for him. And then I've gone and changed, some of the caps in it and so on that made his voice, just kind of tailored around his voice print. And I found it works really well on some other vocalists as well. I've not changed it back to the original yet, though I do have that card. So, just keep it special.
I see a Sound
That's the
Deluxe
one.
U95, very reasonably priced for a high-end mic at 2,100 used. But even at the U95 at $2,100 for a tube mic is very affordable. And that's a 1990s one, probably a similar vintage, I presume, to the one you have.
Yes. I bought that one new in 92, I think.
I think whatever this one is on Reverb won't be here after this interview comes out. Well, Toby, it's absolutely amazing talking to you. Thank you for being so kind and forthcoming, especially on the gear stuff. Oh, only other thing though, 1073 on the vocal.
Always.
Yeah, great. And then compressor chain.
1176 Bluey from 1954.
Oh wow.
Yep. And I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them from the 50s and early 60s.
Wow. Any other compression?
Nope. I actually don't use any other compressors. Those
are the compressors that you use. Yeah.
I just use those 1176s. And when I'm out like doing live gigs and all that kind of stuff, and you're on a digital desk, you spin up a compressor on something. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to go, I need my 1176s and go patch them in. It's like, you got to work with what you are given at the moment. And, sometimes when I don't have my trusty gear with me, I just go after, whatever, because it's all the same. You know what I mean? Like, you have your preferences of things, but if I need a compressor and there's one in the room that works, I'm in.
Incredible. Toby, thanks ever so much once again for being so forthcoming and sharing all that stuff. I really, really appreciate it. Good luck with the new band. Congratulations on all of your success. And
thank you.
Hopefully we'll get up there. It'd be nice to do a studio tour with you.
Absolutely. It'd be great.
Thanks, Toby. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So long, everybody.
We'll talk soon.
So long,
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, tootines, goodbye.